All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, very excited to be talking to an individual who has quite the intriguing heavyweight fight going down in the UFC on October 19th as part of that UFC Fight Night offering. We've got Austen Lane and Robelis Despaigne getting out there, and great getting to have Austin on Bowks Talking Bouts to talk a bit about that today. How are you doing, man?
Yeah. Dude, I'm very casual, man. How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing good, man. I saw you had a post a bit before, though, like I guess like a few weeks ago at this point where you were
Yeah.
talking about how the motivational component wasn't necessarily needed. You know what's at stake and
Mhm.
you know who you're fighting for. Like, what is at stake and who are you fighting for those who might not know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when it comes down to it, this is the fourth fight of my four-fight deal, so there's a lot at stake here. Essentially, the way I view it is that you either win or you go home. You either win and the story continues and the work that you put in, the dream that you've been chasing continues, or you lose and it's back to the drawing board. So in my opinion, the stakes cannot be higher. So that's what's at stake right now. And as far as who I'm fighting for, it really comes down to a few people. I'm fighting for my inner circle, but most importantly, I'm fighting for myself and I'm fighting for my son, who is 9 years old, who has been my biggest advocate. No matter what, in terms of the sport or in terms of life, no matter what it's thrown at me, he has always been super supportive. He's always had my back. So I'm doing this for him as well.
No, I love that, man. That's a great answer. That's so important for sure because you probably can. I mean, you've been so successful in a few different things, like just, previously being in the NFL
Mhm.
as well. Like, I'm sure you can almost kind of get into a situation where it's like you're so far in the forest, you can't really see the trees and whatnot. And to have someone like your son who's just always going to be there, regardless of what you're doing at the end of the day, I'm sure that really, keeps you grounded and really means a lot.
Yeah, man, it really does, and especially in this sport of fighting, I kind of approached it differently the past couple of years. I didn't let really people get close to me because I knew that it's a tedious sport, it's a rough sport, it's mentally taxing and everything, and it's obviously it's ups and downs, right? And I knew that I could handle the ups and downs by myself, but I didn't want people to share the downs with me because I didn't want to put people through that. It wasn't until later on in my career that I realized that no matter what I do in that cage, no matter how people view me, my son's gonna always be my biggest fan, and that literally came down to I'll quick share a story. So after my last fight, obviously I'm a little bummed. I'm disappointed in myself. It was a fight that I thought I had in my hands in that first round. The second round just didn't go my way. And a few days later, me and my son go to a movie. And it was PG-13, but ended up being a scary, scary ass movie. And halfway through it, I'm like, man, I'm probably not the best dad right now because he's going to have nightmares. Because I remember being that age, like I said, he's 9. I remember being 9 years old, watching the movie Alien, and I couldn't
Yeah.
sleep for like the next year and a half, dude. Like that movie still affects me. So we're at this movie and everything. The movie finishes, and I'm like, man, my head's down. And keep in mind too, I do co-parenting, right? So I have my son Thursday through Sunday on the weekends. And we get back to my house and everything. I'm getting ready to put him to bed. And I'm just like, hey, man, you want to talk about anything? Like, is everything okay? I know we just kind of saw an intense movie. Are you okay? And he's like, yeah. Why wouldn't things be okay? You're the toughest dude in the world. Like, I know I'm safe with you. I know I'm fine. We're all good. And like, as soon as he said that, and I didn't know that's what I needed to hear at that time after that loss, but that's exactly what I needed to hear. And it goes to show you, man, like regardless of what I do in this world, he's gonna always have my back, man. So that's all I needed to hear to know that, hey, when it comes to my son, I can bring you along on this journey, and I can share the ups and downs with you because I know you're always gonna think the world of me, and that's all I need.
Yeah, there's such like an earnestness and a confidence that exists from, I guess, that father-son kind of
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. Like that must have been incredible to, hear at that juncture. Like, I mean, you kind of touched on it there, just how it was like the exact thing you needed to hear. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It's really hard to put into words. It's one moment in our lives that meant so much, and it was spontaneous. And Obviously, it wasn't pre-planned or anything. It just happened like that. And when he said that, and I put him to bed, and gave him a hug and told him good night as I was walking down the stairs, I'm just like, yeah, he's always gonna be there for me, and I appreciate that. So it's almost that was the point where I realized where I go, he's gonna go, and where he goes, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I appreciate
Mhm.
you giving that anecdote, man. And I guess I'd be
Mhm.
kind of curious to get some insights in this kind of sense too, because I mentioned how high level you were in football, being that you got to the NFL. And I also understand you were big into ice hockey, like that was your best sport apparently, which
Yeah.
as a Canadian, that's always cool to hear. But I guess
Oh,
I'm
right on,
curious
man.
because
Who's your team?
I guess kind of like defaulting to the Leafs just being that they're the local team. They're not exactly the most successful, but yeah, it kind of
Thoughts
is
and
what it is.
prayers, man.
Yeah, right.
Dude, I'll share a quick story with you about the Leafs. So, what was it? UFC 297 was in Toronto, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
I was cornering one of my teammates, Ramon Tavares, and we're in the locker room warming up. And I was trying to, because it was bad service in that arena, and with the arena, I guess was where the Leafs play, because there's Maple Leafs things, and I'm a Wings fan, man. So like it felt kind of bad being in that arena, but I end up going to like one of the helpers, and I'm like, hey, can I get the Wi-Fi password? And she points to the sign. And we're in the way locker room, so I assume that the Maple Leafs don't do you any favors in terms of like helping out with the password. But the password was like, I'm not exaggerating, it was like 25 characters long, and they threw like numbers and like numerals in there and everything. And I turned to the lady that was working the door. I'm like, this is why y'all can't win a playoff game, because y'all so focused on the password and stuff. Like you don't even care about the hockey performance. So, and
Yeah.
she kind of chuckled a little bit and everything, man. But yeah, that's my Toronto Maple Leaf story.
It seemed like you had a few connections to that event in a certain regard then, because I mean, Sean Strickland headlined that event
Yeah.
and whatnot. And it seems like you guys get in a lot of great work. Like, what's it like, training with someone like Sean Strickland? It seems to really up your level even further.
Yeah, so it's not just Sean Strickland. I mean, he was kind of the foot in the door, if you will. He's actually, so I think he's engaged or might be married or might be dating, but whatever the case is, significant other, she grew up in Jacksonville. So he's been in Jacksonville a couple of times. So we've gotten some work in down here, and then I actually for my camp for half of it, I'm going to be going back to Vegas here in about 4 or 5 days. I've been doing my camp at Extreme Couture with Sean Strickland and company, and that's made all the difference, because you talk about a guy like Sean Strickland, and it's really any of those guys in that camp, in that room, they only train one way, and they train like they fight. Every single time you go in there, it's not going to be a 3 hour drill session. It's not going to be a walkthrough. It's a war, man. It's the closest thing to a fight that you're going to get to. Whether it's grappling, whether it's sparring, whether it's just striking, these guys go hard, man, and that's exactly what I needed. So it was a blessing to get out to Vegas, get some working with some heavyweights, with some guys that are my size, even maybe a little bigger than me, and just get accustomed to going, deep rounds, deep waters with those guys. And it's made all the difference in the world. So I've been back now in Jacksonville for about a week and a half, and then I'm getting ready to finish up my camp back in Vegas, man. And, Eric, who owns that gym and everything, and there's a lot of good coaches in there, and Sean helps run everything, but I couldn't have picked a better gym. It's not flashy, it's not glitz, it's not glamour, man. It's just blue collar and it's hard work. And that's exactly what I needed going into this camp.
Yeah, so has that been like a relatively recent addition to your preparations, like getting in that cross-training Vegas work as well?
Yeah, I mean, this is my first camp that I've gone to Vegas to do that work. But I mean, I've been there now for about 3.5 weeks. And then, like I said, I'll be going back for another 2 weeks or so. So we're talking about 5.5 weeks total, then up until my fight. So probably 6 weeks total with those guys. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that have fights coming up. Michelle Pereira is a guy that will be on my fight card October 19th. So he's getting ready for his fight as well. And it's exactly what I needed, man. It's a bunch of killers in there that are focused on the same goal, and it's try to bring out the best skill set that you can, and at the same time helping guys get better. and that's the thing I think that people don't see about Sean Strickland. You see the 20-minute, or I'm sorry, the 20-second video of him sparring and maybe beating somebody up, treating it like it's a war. But what you don't see is when that round is done, is him helping people, and I've acquired a vast amount of information from Sean Strickland and other guys in that gym as well, when we're done. And it's kind of a catch-22, man, because when I played ball, you didn't really see this where guys are like, giving you tips of how to win. And keep in mind, we're talking about fighters are teaching you in that gym to spar better with you, so you're essentially teaching someone how to punch you in the face better. You're essentially teaching someone how to take you down better and then punch you in the face. It's a special thing. And I think every gym's like that. But for whatever reason, man, with like Extreme Couture, like I said, there's a bunch of killers in there, but we're all trying to get better. And like I said, I couldn't be happier with where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I misconstrued what you just said, but like, did you almost notice in other sports with other high level athletes that they're almost being, I guess, withholding in a way, for lack of a better way to phrase it, with maybe perhaps
So
some of the knowledge they have?
yeah, so it's definitely changed since I've been retired out of the league. Back when I was in the league in the NFL back in 2010, 2014, yeah, you didn't see a lot of guys, getting together and, kind of sharing information and everything. It seems like the past 5 years, people have really took to that. I mean, like, I'm not sure if you follow the sport of football at all, but there's like tight end university where like in the summertime, every like tight end in the NFL like will go on a trip together and they'll share information. They'll train together. And like the defensive ends do this, the linebackers do that. When I was playing, it wasn't really like that. Like you had your teammates that could show you stuff, but like as far as like people in the division, the last thing they want to do is help you out, man. Like that's like your divisional opponent right there. I ain't trying to help you out. But now it's changed. Now I think players are trying to get each other better. But back when I played, man, it was kind of every man for himself.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of interesting to hear that. I guess it kind of underscores a thing that I've always seen over the years, and just even more so from directly talking to fighters, like in the sense of even though the body of the competition is individual sport, like it really is a team sport. You're talking
Mhm.
about like working with, Pereira, who's readying to fight on this card and stuff like that. Like there is a certain camaraderie and, communal uplifting of everyone's skill set in this sport.
No, without a doubt, man. Like people want to say this is such an individual sport, right? And some people want to say that it's the loneliest sport that there is. And sometimes I think to a facet, especially after a loss, it can feel like the loneliest sport. But having been to the Apex now for a while, having been to obviously Extreme Couture, man, um, it's a family, and the energy that I've gotten from my teammates that I've trained with there in Vegas, or just in passing at the Apex, it's contagious and it's a beautiful thing. And I don't think it doesn't really get talked about enough. I mean, we're all seen as just these gladiators that go in a cage and we put all the emotion aside and we go out there and fight. And yes, that is true. But in order to get to that point, you need a strong team around you to help build that confidence, to help reassure in your skill set, to help reassure that you're training the right way, that you're preparing the right way. And you can't do that on your own. It doesn't matter how talented you are. You're only as strong as the people that you surround yourself with. And for this camp, I've surrounded myself with nothing but killers.
Yeah, it is interesting because you even kind of touched on something earlier that got me, I guess, thinking in that similar kind of vein, like just speaking to like people's perceptions sometimes. It's like Sean Strickland, you'll sometimes see the stuff go viral where it's like, I don't know, he's like fighting a streamer or something like that. And people are like, oh, yeah, you beat that guy up. But it doesn't really
Yeah.
capture like the totality of what is going on, where he is more of an uplifting, like almost team captain kind of figure. Like I've gotten that from some other people that train him, like just in terms of wanting to like really lift everybody up and everything like that. It's just, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess in a way it probably speaks to just like the stuff that resonates with people on the internet sometimes, which I mean can be a totally different conversation, but yeah, it's like a little unfortunate. You don't get the full scope of everything.
Yeah. And I'll say this much, like I think if you're a fighter, if you've been in the cage, you kind of know what's up. If you don't, and I have no idea like what kind of background Sean Strickland had in terms of athletics. I don't know how much of an athlete he is, but I do know this. When it comes to the work, You see him there every single day, and he only knows how to go one way, and that's 100%. And I don't think it's a mistake that he's become a UFC champion because I think he's forged himself into the fighter that he is, right? Like, I'm not sure if he's been blessed with like the sheer athleticism, the sheer strength, the sheer talent, if you will. But the dude has literally forged himself with hard work and his mentality. And that's why who he is today. And if and people want to say like, oh, he doesn't knock people out sometimes and it's a boring fight. The dude always comes forward and the dude
Yeah.
always stands in the pocket. And guess what? He's got, and so it's not a spoiler or anything, but he's got crazy ass wrestling too that he never uses. Like he would much rather stand in the pocket and trade with you, right? So like sometimes you need a dance partner to do that with, and that's kind of what I've learned from him as well. The rounds that we've been sparring, like if you go at him, he'll give it right back, despite if I'm a little bigger, despite if I have him a little weight. That's just he only knows one way. And I think it's a very cool thing when somebody can be genuine like that, know exactly who they are, and just believe in the work. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm just trying to cement myself in with the work. I don't care about the optics of social media. I don't care about trying to spread my brand. All I'm concerned about right now is the work. And I feel like the work will speak for itself.
Yeah, and you mentioned mentality earlier. Like I was doing some background information on you before this interview, and it was in reference to a prior chat you'd had with John Hyun Ko, where it
Oh
seemed like
yeah,
you were
yeah.
very, yeah, no, I love that guy. Great stuff
Mhm.
as always. But it seemed like you were very forthright in a lot of regards, like just talking about how maybe sometimes there's some athletes that like don't necessarily have that long look in the mirror. Like that seems like a big attribute that would be in your favor, like just always being like, okay, I've, grown in X amount of ways, but also it's like there's always opportunities to get better. Is that something you've always kind of had within you through all of your athletic endeavors? Is it something you've kind of honed and refined over the years? Like, how has that been mentality wise, I guess?
Yeah, yeah. I think it really comes down to my upbringing. I mean, I was thankful to be raised by two grandparents, and my mother primarily, and then down the line, some other people came in the picture as well. But it was always about being humble and being honest with yourself, and that was kind of the household living with my grandparents that I really picked up on. So I feel like that's kind of always been there. Like I said, I mean, I'm not really concerned about fame, and I'm not concerned about the cloud and the notoriety, because that shit will come and go. I'm more concerned of the self growth. I'm more concerned of the honest conversation that you have to have with yourself, because that's where the real work is, man. It's easy to lie to yourself. It's easy to make up excuses. It's easy to say, yeah, that fight didn't go my way just because point A or point B. But it's much harder to look at yourself and say, where did I go wrong? What can I do better? And how do I get there? And that's where the real self improvement comes. And whether that's fighting, whether that's everyday life, whether that's with your personal life, whether with your family life, the honest conversations with yourself are where you make the most progress. And some people, whether they don't have the balls, whether they don't have the time, the energy, the effort, they don't want to have those conversations with themselves. I have that conversation with myself every single day, and I embrace it. Sometimes I don't look forward to it. Sometimes I dread it, but it's something that needs to be done in order to grow.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess just in speaking to the growth thing, like I kind of was piecing this together a little bit as I was, getting the preparatory measures sorted out for talking to you. But
Mhm.
it was interesting, like you recalling like your first anecdote being involved in jujitsu. Like he was a purple belt, and you were like, oh, he's kind of like a
Yes.
smaller guy. He was like 135 pounds, and you were like, I feel like my power will kind of carry me through in a lot of regards. But you were like, yeah, it was a humbling experience. I collected myself, and I mean, now you're a BJJ purple belt, I saw as of
Yeah.
March. So just a cool journey to follow in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That was really my first humbling experience in MMA was rolling jujitsu. Like even when I first started sparring everything, like obviously guys are a little smaller than me, so I picked it up right away. But I thought jujitsu and grappling was something where I could just rely on my football background, my athleticism, and my physical skill set to carry me through. And when you go against guys that are extremely skilled, that have been doing it for many years, that are versed in the sport, that's not the case at all. So yeah, that was my very first like humbling experience, and At the time I was kind of like, I don't want to say I was embarrassed, but I was like, well, shit, that was rough. But then I remember like driving, in the car home after that, after getting armbarred and triangled and getting tapped out, like I think it was four or five times in like 10 minutes. I was laughing to myself. I'm like, damn, man, there's something to the sport. There's something that I think I want to pursue when playing ball is done, because to take my physique and my background and to kind of get embarrassed like that. Imagine what happens when I get that skill set. Imagine what happens when I start to learn those skills and I start to acclimate myself with jujitsu and grappling and MMA, just how good I'll be.
Yeah, and I guess like kind of in line with some of the stuff we've been talking about as far as like looking in the mirror and kind of trying to like I guess figure out some of the things that need to be shored up or changed or amended, etc.
Mhm.
Like it seems like your upcoming opponent has kind of done that because I was seeing in some of the articles that I was checking out, it looks like he's made that move to American Top Team to get in work with Steve Mocco, who's such like a renowned wrestling coach, and
Yeah,
because that seemed to be like the I guess knock on him from the classic, critics that are always out there on social media talking about how maybe the grappling component wasn't quite there for him. So it'd be
correct.
interesting to see it in that regard. Like it seems like he's trying to make his own efforts to subvert like some of the issues that maybe he's
Yeah,
had in some other
I
fights.
mean, as he should. I mean, he fought Waldo Costa, and people want to say that he got exposed a little bit, and I think that's the truth. You could tell that he did not look comfortable from his back, and he's trained a lot in Orlando, so he's trained a lot with the guys that I've trained with in the past, and I have the details of what he's all about. I have the details of what he does well and what he doesn't do well. And yeah, I think he made the right decision to go to American Top Team and work on his wrestling, because according to his last fight, that's what he needs to work on. So yeah, I mean, it's you're never a finished product in the sport of MMA, and I think with him, obviously, it comes down to grappling.
That's interesting. I didn't know about those anecdotal connections there. So you felt like you were able to glean a lot from some people who've worked with him and now you're working with them, like to, I guess, a point where it's going to really benefit you in a direct way in this fight, just with that anecdotal knowledge there.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything, right? Because it's one thing to know how a person does in sparring, what their weaknesses are, what their strengths are, what they like to do, what their tendencies are, but it's another thing to actually learn their mindset. And I have a pretty good idea of what this dude's mindset is, even. So yeah, I think I have the advantage. Now, who's to say those people that sparred with him didn't disclose information about me too? Maybe they did. I like to think that I have a better relationship with those guys than he does, but who knows? Maybe they spilled some things about me as well. But as far as I'm concerned, I have a very good picture of who I'm fighting, what his mentality is, what he likes to do, what he's not comfortable with, and the steps I'm going to need to win this fight.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess this is something that kind of had caught my attention just with like some past endeavors that I've had in like radio broadcasting and things of that persuasion. Like that seems like something you've been into quite a bit over the years. Like when did you kind of get involved with all of that and like how has that been as I guess just a creative outlet over the
Yeah,
years? Because it seems like you've done some great stuff with like Megan and Austin in the morning, and it seems like
yeah,
Brent
man.
and Austin is like,
Yeah.
something you're really like putting a lot of time into now.
Yeah, man, I've been doing it all. So I was a mass communications major in college, so I've kind of had the gift of gab, I guess you could say, a little bit. So obviously playing in the NFL, that kind of got me into sports radio a little bit. I parlayed that into top 40 morning radio, which was something that I never visualized doing, playing, pop hits from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the morning. Needless to say, when that music was going on, I didn't pick the music. That was somebody else's job, but I kind of had my own iPhone, or I had like my YouTube channel on the computer. I would just kind of blast my own music, which wasn't pop music, but yeah, it's been a cool experience so far in my broadcasting career, and I've also written some entries for Sports Illustrated as well. And to me, it's all about being an artist, right? Whether you're expressing yourself in the cage, whether you're expressing yourself on the microphone, which I'm sure you can allude to, whether you're expressing yourself, you're putting blood to paper when you're writing a story or a memoir or just a self-reflection. It's all about expression. And I think that's a blessing. And I think more people should do that, because it's a great thing to showcase who you are as a person and what you're all about. through these mediums, and I'm very blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I could definitely get that sense from how you seem to apply yourself to these different things. Like it just seems like you're very, I guess, immersed into whatever you're doing at a given time. And like you said, just like figuring out different ways to express oneself. And it seems like there's that adaptability and openness to, trying new things. Like, I mean, even you saying top 40 wasn't something you ever necessarily saw yourself doing, but at the same time, you're like, okay, like I can figure something out here and make it
Yeah,
work and whatnot.
listen, man. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you one thing about adaptability real quick. If you look at history, if you look at nature, there's been animals, there's been the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, the smartest animals. Some of them have gone extinct. And it's not about being the biggest. It's not about being the fastest. It's not about being the smartest. It's the animals that can adapt in nature that make it. And that's the same thing with everyday life, whether it's MMA, whether it's football, whether it's your 9 to 5 job. Those who are willing to adapt and those who open to themselves that are willing to adapt will be successful and they will be at the top of the food chain. Those who can adapt, who rely on being comfortable and not changing, they'll be left behind and they'll be left by the wayside because nature is the ultimate indicator.
Yeah, it's so true. And like everything, especially in like this kind of field, like I guess in talking about, I mean, really, you could even apply it to MMA too. Like it seems like every few years there's like this new, like
Yeah.
almost paradigm shift of sorts that pops up. Like there's like some new permutation of
Karate,
like what works.
wrestling. Yeah, yeah, man. It always changes.
Yeah, I guess that's what keeps it interesting and probably stimulating for a person like yourself, just like working within that ever evolving metagame as I guess kind of like a microcosm of your life overall.
Correct. Yes.
No, I love that, man. I just thought that was cool to see you were getting up to. I kind of feel you on like the music component. Like I worked at like a classic rock and country station for a bit, but like certain times I'd be like blasting like metal or rap or something like that. So
Yeah, man, for sure. You kind of have to find that balance, right? Like you can only play so much Ariana Grande where you got to put, some hip hop or some punk on to try to balance it out a little bit.
yeah, I think it's just the repetition component, especially because I've done like a bit of other like top 40 stuff or like countdown shows outside of that. And it's inherently like usually the same stuff because things are, trending well for a while. Like they're usually getting those max rotations. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, for sure, man. But yeah, I guess like in talking about because I feel like you're a guy who is very cerebral and analytical, as we've talked about. Like I know some fighters really get heavy into the visualization
Yeah.
component of their fights. Like, is that something that you delve into a fair bit? And I guess if that is something you delve into, like, I guess what do you see ultimately unfolding in this fight? Like in terms of, is there like a reoccurring visualization you might
Yeah.
have for this next one?
Yeah, in terms of visualization, yeah, I do at least 20 minutes of meditation at night, and it's the first thing I do in the morning. And when we talk about visualization, it's basically it's putting yourself in the moments. So when those moments happen to you, when you're in present in that moment, you're not surprised by them, right? So whether it's the walk to the cage, whether it's the ride to the arena, whether it's warming up in the back, whether it's the feel that canvas on your feet, whether it's seeing those punches, those kicks come at you, it's just making sure that you've seen it all before, so you're not taken back by anything. As far as my visualization, yeah, it's I visualize this a million ways, and it's important not to get married to one specific thing, because if you do that, then all of a sudden you don't leave yourself open to adapt, like we've talked about before a little bit. So yes, I visualize the outcome. I visualize where this fight could go. Obviously, it can stay standing. Obviously, it can go to the ground. I'm not married to any of it. I'm just going to take what's presented to me and I'm going to go from there. And then that's kind of been the focus of this fight camp. Obviously, he's been working on his wrestling. So I expect, like, if I try to take him down, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. So maybe we stay standing, maybe we go to the ground. I'm like I said, the game plan isn't tied to one necessarily thing. Like, yes, we've seen tendencies. Yes, I know what he's about in terms of his sparring partners talking to me and everything. So I have a bunch of inside information. I think I know what his mentality is going to be for this fight. But once again, you can't be married to any specific skill. You just have to take the fight as it goes.
Yeah, no, well said, man. You got to have that certain level of adaptability, like bringing
Yep.
up that word again that we've kind of touched on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's just, I think your, I guess, just rate of, I guess, finishes really is like, it just really speaks volumes. But in a way, it's like, it doesn't really read to me like seeing your fights that you get too preoccupied in getting these finishes. Like, you don't like overextend yourself to the point
Yeah.
of being, I guess, defensively irresponsible. But yet, I mean, you've got this 100% finishing rate with the 11 striking based stoppages and then the submission victory you have as well. And then, I mean, nine first round finishes as well. So it's interesting. Like, is there a certain, I guess, component to your temperament that you find just kind of keeps you in that certain pocket to where you're not doing these things that I was kind of alluding to, where it seems like you're not overextending to be in a disadvantaged position, but yet your track record for
Yeah.
largely quick finishes is there. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, it's about trying to find that flow, and I've had that in a couple of fights now, and I think I've kind of finally fine tuned my mentality and what I've done in the gym in terms of my work ethic and working the right way to find that flow. My last fight, unfortunately, I took my opponent down. Probably could have got mounted a lot sooner. Should have went for that finish. Got too comfortable, and like many fighters, wasn't 100%. And after that fight, I had to take probably my longest time off that I've taken, where literally went about a month and some change and didn't do anything just because I had to allow my body to heal. Body was not responding well to my last training camp and had some things I was going through. So, that was it was good to take some of that rest now and then kind of recharge a little bit for this fight camp. But at the end of the day, man, I don't look for the knockouts. The knockouts will always present themselves for me. So I'm not going out there to try to knock out my opponent. I'm not going out there to try to overextend myself, which is some mistakes that I made in the past, which I've learned from. The opportunity will present itself because, like I said, I've seen things. We've talked about things with my people, my opponents, with the people that he sparred with, where I know opportunities will present themselves. And now it's just my job as a fighter when those opportunities are there, when that red alarm's going off, that I make sure that I capitalize on it.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a great time getting to talk to you, man. I'm sure there's a ton more questions I could ask, but I want to be mindful of the rest of your schedule, what you're getting up to tonight and unwinding from training. So I figured I'd give you the floor in case there was like a final thought you might have wanted to add as we're wrapping up here, Austin. I do appreciate the
Yeah.
time.
No, man. I mean, honestly, this was therapeutic for me, man. I appreciate it. Anytime that I can, get on an interview and the host, asks great questions, does their research, and allows me just to kind of be myself, man. It's always appreciative. So, I think this is our first time, obviously, having a conversation together, man. But I'm very impressed and I'm very thankful that you've provided me an outlet, a medium to kind of speak my truth a little bit, to kind of speak my piece, man. So, thank you for the opportunity, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, great getting to have you on Bowks Talking Bouts. Hopefully the first of many different
Yeah.
conversations. And yeah, no, I'm excited for this card overall, man. This UFC Fight Night on October 19th, which I'm sure that's a sentiment shared by many individuals. And yeah, just a great matchup with Robelis Despaigne here. And thanks so much again for coming on the program and offering such great insights. And just, yeah, like I said, I'll be peeping the fight when it goes down. But until then, you enjoy the rest of your night, man. Thank you.
Right on, man. Appreciate it. Best of luck to your Maple Leafs, man. I'll be cheering for my wings, and hopefully we'll see you guys maybe in the playoffs or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I got a lot of love for Detroit too, just because it's so Canada adjacent. It's like
Yeah,
essentially
yeah.
Canada-ish in a way. It's like, yeah, Canada,
Yeah,
yeah.
man. I mean, it's probably literally like a 20-minute tunnel ride underneath the tunnel to Canada from Detroit. So yeah, it's pretty close by.
Yeah, you can like throw a rock at it from Windsor, basically.
Yeah, 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 for sure, man.
But yeah, no, thanks again so much, man, and you have a good rest of your night. Thank you.
All good, man. You have a great night. Stay casual, dude. We'll see you down the road, man. Be easy.